Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We will start the webinar very shortly. We'll just give it a couple of minutes for any late attendees to get signed in. In the meantime, if you could just confirm in the Q&A box on the right-hand side whether you can hear me okay. And that will just ensure that I'm not speaking to myself for the next 20 minutes. So if you could just put a comment in the Q&A box on the right-hand side, or just like the comment that I've posted. Then we will get underway very shortly. Thank you. Thank you very much to those who've liked the comment. Just before we begin, myself and my colleague Peter Edwards, so I am Gemma Callow, I should say, I am the Communications Manager for Bunbury's, leading on stakeholder engagement. I'm joined by my colleague Peter Edwards today, who's Principal Clean Air Zone Officer. We'll talk through how the Clean Air Zone will operate and the support that's available. Should let you know that we are both working from home, so you may hear children or pets in the background, for which we apologise. We have tried to keep them quiet. And we will also be recording this session, and we will send you a link to the recording afterwards so you can share it with family, friends, colleagues, etc. who are unable to join us live today. If you have any questions during the course of the presentation, please pop them in the Q&A box on the right-hand side. We will address any questions at the end, but we'll run through the presentation first. Hopefully that will answer any questions that you've got, but if not, we will run through any questions at the end. So make it 2 minutes past. I'll give it another minute just for any late joiners, and then we'll run through the presentation. Thank you. Okay, so I'll get started now. So hopefully you can all see, apologies, the presentation on screen there. Okay, so like I say, we'll get underway now. So Birmingham is introducing a clean air zone because poor air quality has been declared a national health emergency. Every year, between 28 and 36,000 people across the UK die from conditions which are exacerbated by poor air quality, including cancer, heart disease and lung disease. I won't go through all the stats on screen, you can see them yourselves, but I think what is important to point out is that children are adversely affected by poor air quality and air pollution. So because our children are shorter and closer to the ground and closer to those concentrated exhaust fumes, they inhale 3 times as much air pollution than we do as adults, which has a significant impact on their growth and development, particularly with regard to their lung function. So poor air quality is a national health emergency, and the Clean Air Zone is being introduced to tackle that. So prior to COVID, we undertook some research into how people travel into Birmingham city centre, and we ascertained that 50% of all journeys into the city centre were undertaken by private car. And of those journeys, every single day, 250,000 of them were for less than 1 mile. So that's a 20-minute walk, 10-minute cycle ride, something you can do on the metro or the bus. So what the Clean Air Zone is looking to do in the very first instance is to deter high polluting vehicles from entering the city centre, but secondly, get people who are undertaking those very short journeys to consider alternative ways of travelling, such as walking or cycling or public transport, to further remove the number of cars that are on our roads and contributing to air pollution. So Birmingham's Clean Air Zone will go live on the 1st of June this year. It has been postponed twice, but it will go live on the 1st of June this year, so in just under 8 weeks' time. It's important to note that a Clean Air Zone is not the same as a congestion charge. So in London, the congestion charge will charge every single vehicle to enter a designated area. A Clean Air Zone will only charge the most high polluting vehicles. Each local authority across the UK that has been tasked with implementing a Clean Air Zone will set the boundary and the category. So in Birmingham, we have opted for a Category D Clean Air Zone, which means we would charge all vehicles, including private cars, cars that do not meet the emission standards. It's important to note that although Birmingham is the second clean air zone to go live outside of London on the 1st of June, Bath was first last month, clean air zones will be being introduced to cities across the UK, such as Manchester, Portsmouth, Liverpool, etc. So although this seems like a very new thing, it will become very commonplace going forward. So Birmingham's clean air zone is the blue area that you can see on screen. It's everywhere within the A4540 Middleway, but not the Middleway itself. So come the 1st of June, if you're in a vehicle that is not subject to the charges, a vehicle that meets the emission standards, you do not need to take any action. You can carry on as normal. However, if you're in a vehicle that does not meet the emission standards, come the 1st of June, you can drive around the A4540 Middleway without charge. But if you enter the blue area in a non-compliant vehicle, you will then be subject to the daily charge. That charge is £8 a day for cars, taxis and vans, and £50 a day for HGVs, coaches and buses. It's important to note a day is midnight to midnight, not 24 hours from when you enter. But during that midnight to midnight time frame, you can enter and leave the zone as many times as you want for a single charge. However, if you drive in at say 10 PM and leave at say 3 AM, then you've crossed that midnight threshold and would therefore be subject to 2 charges. That's particularly important to note for anybody who does evening shifts. If you are subject to the charges, you must make payment online or over the phone using the government payment system. And you can pay either 6 days prior to the day of your visit, the day of your visit, or 6 days after. So that's a 13-day payment window. If you do not pay within that 13-day payment window, you will be subject to a fixed penalty notice of £120. That's reduced to £60 if paid within 14 days. We have installed over 300 signs on the boundary and the approach to the zone warning that you're entering a chargeable area, but that is the only warning that you will receive. You will not get a text or a letter or an email to say that you've entered and payment is due. The onus is on you as a driver to know that you've entered, and it's on you as a driver to make the payment within that time frame. It's the same as London. So what we're trying to do through these webinars is to make people aware so they know what they're looking for, they know if they're subject to the charges, and if they are subject to the charges, they either pay them within that allocated time frame or look at alternative forms of travel. So the big question is, will I be charged and is my vehicle compliant? So the easiest thing to do is to go onto the Brumbury's website. We'll put a link up to that shortly. And from there, you can click onto the government vehicle checker, enter your registration details, and it will tell you whether or not your vehicle is subject to the charge. What we're looking for is vehicles to meet certain emission standards, which is a Euro 4 petrol or better, a Euro 6 diesel or better, gas Euro 6, fully electric, fully hydrogen fuel cell, or a hybrid electric meeting those diesel and petrol Euro standards. This information is in the V5C of your logbook. The dates on screen for petrol vehicles give an indication of when those vehicles came into circulation. So most Euro 4 petrol vehicles became into circulation from 2006 onwards, and most Euro 6 diesels were manufactured from September 2015 onwards. I must stress those dates are for guidance. It is the emission standard that will determine whether or not you are subject to the charge. And like I say, the easiest thing to do is to go onto the Brumbury's website and use the government vehicle checker. So despite some media reports, this is not intended to be a money-making scheme for the council. If we make no money from the clean air zone, then that's fantastic from our perspective, because it means there are no high polluting vehicles driving through the city centre, therefore air quality will improve, and that is our objective. However, we do understand that particularly in the early days, we will make money from this scheme, so we have to reinvest that money in transport-related projects and policies. We cannot use it to support the council's general budget, and it cannot be used to fund council services such as bin collections or repairs to the floozy and the jacuzzi. So some of the schemes that have been identified to date are introducing controlled parking zones on the boundary of the A4540 Middleway. That's to protect residents, to stop people dumping their cars on the boundary and walking in. We are funding a hydrogen bus pilot scheme for 20 buses, which will come into effect later this year. And we're also going to invest some of the money in improving city centre pedestrianisation and active travel networks, so cycle lanes, etc., so that walking and cycling are safer and more appealing to people. You're not crossing with traffic to have to do it, And again, that's particularly important to discourage those journeys that I mentioned earlier that are for less than 1 mile. At this point, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Peter Edwards, who's Principal Clean Air Zone Officer, and he will talk through the support that's available, particularly in relation to people who work in the Clean Air Zone.
Thank you, Gemma. Yeah, just to introduce myself, my name is Peter Edwards, Principal Clean Air Zone Officer with overall responsibility for delivering the exemptions as part of the Clean Air Zone programme, but then also the financial support. So we'll touch on those in some later slides. I think before we talk about these exemptions and go through what's on the slides, it's important to kind of put into some context where these have come from. So in 2018, a consultation was put out on the Clean Air Zone. That consultation was not, shall we do a Clean Air Zone? It was, we have to do a Clean Air Zone. How should we do it? Where should it cover? And who do we think will be most impacted and therefore would need the most support? Off the back of that, and it received close to 11,000 responses, we have come up with a suite of exemptions and financial support packages, which I'm going to talk you through now. So you can see on screen that we have a range of what I call kind of applicable exemptions. So these are exemptions that you can apply online for now, and I would encourage you to do so. So given the title of this webinar, I'm not going to focus too much on the residents exemption, but that's just to say that residents of the Clean Air Zone in non-compliant vehicles can apply for an exemption, and that exemption can last, it will last for up to 2 years. They'll have to reapply after the first year to prove they still live in the zone and still have the non-compliant car. But yeah, that's a 2-year exemption for people living in the zone. What's more relevant for the audience on this call is our workers exemption, and the workers exemption is for individuals that are travelling into the Clean Air Zone for work, working more than 18 hours a week and earning less than £30,000 a year. Then you can access a 1-year exemption. I will talk about the document requirements and what you need to do on the next slide. We also have an exemption for commercial vehicles, so people operating fleets within the Clean Air Zone. And then finally, there will be an exemption supplied for people visiting the 3 medical centres in the Clean Air Zone that provide out of hours or emergency services. So they are the Children's Hospital, Atwood, Bath Row or Atwood Green, has kind of 2 names, or Badger Medical Centre. This will be done by a kind of a voucher system whereby visitors, patients to those medical centres in non-compliant vehicles will pick up a voucher from reception, and then we will credit that voucher online, and that will kind of negate the charge on that day. And more information will be released about that in the coming months, or in the coming month. Really, that system is developed now. We just need to build it into the website and obviously just make it go live on the 1st of June. Next slide, please. So as we've already talked about, the Clean Air Zone workers exemption, it has 3 main eligibility criteria. So you need to be able to evidence that you are the registered keeper of a non-compliant vehicle. So that's a vehicle that would be charged. So you need to have your name on the V5 document. It can't be your partner's name, your husband, wife's partner, your families. It needs to say Peter Edwards on that V5 if I'm applying for the exemption. You need to be able to show us that you work at least 18 hours a week in an address within the zone. That is done by a letter from your employer. There is a model letter on our website which shows you what we expect for that letter. So it needs to be on letterhead. It needs to say in the body of the text that Peter Edwards works for Birmingham City Council at Lancaster Circus for 35 hours a week. So we are quite specific about that, but there's a kind of a template letter on our website that you can copy, and you can ask your employer to provide something similar. And then finally, we need you to show us that you earn less than £30,000 a year. So that can be a pay slip or a P60, or if you're self-employed, it can be your most recent tax return. So what you need to do is to go to the front page of the Bunbury's website. There's a link at the front that says apply for exemption. Read through the terms and conditions, get those documents ready, scan them, take a picture of them, create an account and then upload them. That will then come to through to my team, and we will process that and make a decision as to whether we think that what you've supplied meets the criteria. If so, we will simply approve it, and in the next month we will issue it, and at that point you will receive an email from us telling us that you have been given an exemption, and that kind of completes the circle. If we need more information, we will contact you and we will seek further clarity. And if you don't meet the criteria, obviously we will decline you. So you will not receive a paper permit as such. Well, not as such. You will not receive anything physical. Your exemption will be confirmed via an email. Your registration will be put on what we're calling the exemptions whitelist, and that will mean that when you drive into the zone in that non-compliant vehicle, you are not charged. So don't expect to receive a permit or something to display on your window, anything like that. Next slide, please. In addition to those kind of big category exemptions that we're expecting to get large volumes in the thousands of, there are also a number of kind of more specific exemptions, more niche vehicles and categories, but it's important to still talk about those. So it's important first of all to say that having a blue badge does not give you an exemption from Clean Air Zone charging. However, if your vehicle has a disabled passenger tax classification, so this is a tax classification from the DVLA on your V5 logbook, then that will give you an automatic national exemption from all Clean Air Zone charging across the country. So you don't need to apply to us, you don't need to do anything, you just need to check your V5, and if it has that, then your vehicle will be exempt from charging. Motorcycles do not need to pay, so that they don't have to do anything. It's just automatically exempt. The cameras will recognise that it's a motorcycle and they will not be charged. Then you've got your specialist vehicles, things like showman's vehicles for big events, historic vehicles which are over 40 years old. Again, that is a DVLA classification, so an automatic national exemption. And then things like specialist vehicles like gritters, emergency services vehicles, we are managing that kind of in collaboration with the emergency services and with those people who are providing gritting services, etc. And then finally, you've got your community and school transport. So this is not for profit kind of ring and ride services, school buses, minibuses, that sort of thing. They can also access an exemption. So that's covers all the different exemptions available. And if you need any more information about those, it's all linked to on our website. But if you think given the nature and the audience of this call, please go and apply for your workers exemption as soon as possible, because we're very busy at the moment, but we're only going to get busier. But it's important to stress that until we tell you that your exemption has been confirmed and finalised, then you are not exempt. So if you submit your application to us on the 23rd of May, a week before the zone goes live, and we can't process it in time, and we will try our very, very best, then you will be liable to pay the charges on the 1st of June until we tell you otherwise. So I can't stress enough the urgency to you and to friends and family, colleagues. Please get your applications in. We're turning them around pretty quickly at the moment, but as we get more and more and the queue gets bigger and bigger and we get more and more coming through, then there will come a cut-off point in May where we will no longer guarantee that your exemption will be processed in time. We will be doing our absolute best, but we would really want to stress the urgency now. So I think it's 55 days until the zone goes live. So if you think you're eligible, apply as soon as possible, please. Next slide, please, Jem. Thank you. So the exemptions are there, and they're there to give you a bit of breathing space. So you may not be able to afford to upgrade your vehicle at the moment. You may not want to go on public transport at the moment because of concerns around COVID. So you can access that short-term exemption, and it will get you a bit of time. Following that, we then have a financial support packages available. One of which is most relevant to this call is what our Scrappage Scheme, whereby people who meet the criteria that were described for the workers before, 18 hours a week, etc., working in the zone, less than £30,000 a year, will be able to apply for a scrappage scheme where you will be given two options to scrap your vehicle, and you're given two options in return for scrapping that non-compliant, higher polluting vehicle. The first being £2,000 towards or taken off the price of a new compliant vehicle. It doesn't have to be a brand new vehicle. As Gemma said, petrol vehicles from around 2006-7 onwards are compliant. Or you can have £2,000 towards a mobility credit or a travel credit, and that will be put on a Swift card. For use on the Transport for West Midlands network. So those are your two options. We're making good progress with this scheme. It's not ready for applications yet, but we have recently appointed Motorpoint as our partner. We've done a press release with that. So they will be the organisation that once we've processed you and told you that you've been approved, they will contact you. They will arrange for the scrappage of your vehicle, and then you can decide whether you want to get a new vehicle or if you want to use your £2,000 credit on public transport. So that scheme is not live yet. It will be live, I would like to say, this time next month, fingers crossed, that everything going well, and it will be open for applications. But if you're eligible for the scrappage scheme, you're eligible for the exemption. So please your exemption, then you won't get charged, and then we can talk about, then we can assess your scrappage as well. I won't go into too much detail about the other two schemes, given the nature of the people on the call, but there is a £10 million fund available for people, for SMEs, small and medium enterprises in the West Midlands who operate HGVs and coaches. This is open for application at the moment. You can apply online via our website. So again, if you've got any friends, family, colleagues who run fleets with large goods vehicles, heavy goods vehicles, please tell them to have a look and potentially apply. And then there's a pot of funding available for Birmingham licensed hackney carriage and private hire drivers, which is proving very popular. We have already paid out more than £1.1 million through that fund, and there's over 800 taxi drivers have upgraded their vehicles to compliant vehicles, electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles. So we can see that the Clean Air Zone is already having an impact. Before the zone's gone live, we've been giving out that funding since December. So already some of those highest journey makers, the taxi drivers, have upgraded their vehicles. So that's really positive to see. So again, if you know any taxi drivers, please tell them to apply. Just bear with me a second. Kids shouting downstairs. I haven't shut the door, so just bear with me 1 second. Apologies for that. It's school holidays, so I'd got out of the habit of shutting the door. Next slide, please, Gemma. Okay, so we've talked about the exemptions, we've talked about the financial support available. I think it's also important to talk about the wider context here. The Clean Air Zone is just one element of Birmingham City Council's plan to make transport in the city cleaner and greener, and to give people more options as to how they travel. We've already seen those stats at the beginning of the presentation about our over-reliance on private motor vehicles and the negative impact that has. That's not just air quality though, is it? It's also congestion, it's also health. We have high levels of obesity in the city, as well as air pollution issues. So what Birmingham City Council is trying to do via its transport plan is 4 big moves, big visions, however you'd like to describe them. The first one being to reallocate road space away from people in private motor vehicles and give that space to people who are cycling, walking or using public transport, more efficient modes of transport. So this could be in the form of bus lanes, providing bus priority. So you have roads that only buses can turn into, etc. Cycle lanes, widening pavements, etc., making it a nicer space for people who are choosing those more sustainable and more efficient modes of transport. The second one is to transform the city centre, again to make it nicer for people walking and cycling, and making movement across it on buses easier, because at the moment cross-city bus services, for example, aren't really possible because of the level of congestion. So this is closing some roads to private motor vehicles, but allowing people to still walk and cycle and use and buses to go through them. Anyone who's ever tried to cycle from one side of the city centre to the other will know that it's nigh on impossible and rather unpleasant at times. So all of these measures to try and improve access for people using those more sustainable methods. The next one is to prioritise active travel in local neighbourhoods. Everything that we've talked about so far has been about the city centre, the clean air zone area, but actually obviously we need to give people the option for walking and cycling in their local neighbourhoods. So some of the things we're talking about here are low traffic neighbourhoods, widening of pavements and stuff on local high streets, but also looking at cycle links for people and the introduction of 20-mile-per-hour limits across the city to try and make it safer and more pleasant. Finally, is to try and manage demand by using parking as kind of a travel demand management tool. So removing all of the free on-street Birmingham City Council controlled parking in the city centre in the clean air zone area. Removing some parking altogether. Just this week, I've seen an announcement that the road just to the side of, I always get my squares mixed up, I think it's Victoria Square by the Town Hall, just coming away from Colmore Row, has been all car parking has been removed, closed to vehicles in order to enable hospitality units to spill out onto the street, but also will make it more pleasant for people to walk and cycle through those areas. So there is lots to be done around the introduction of parking schemes across the city, like Gemma's already touched upon, in terms of controlled parking in and around the border of the clean air zone. So those are the four big kind of key visions. The transport plan is available to look at online, and because of COVID, obviously consultation events are not really happening in ward forums or in town hall, in community centres, but there is a platform called Commonplace where all of these schemes that I've talked through can be commented on and consulted upon. So we can put a link to that in the chat or in the follow-up email following this. I think the next slide is the last slide, please, Gemma. Yes, so this slide again puts it even a wider context. The clean air zone, as we've already talked about with the taxi drivers, etc., is an enabler of change. Birmingham City Council has committed to route to zero carbon by 2030. Not something that can be achieved simply only by Birmingham City Council. We need the collaboration with the residents, the citizens of the city, communities, businesses, and everyone across the city to act now and perhaps identify ways in which they can change their behaviour and the way that they travel. Transport is one of the key contributors to carbon emissions and obviously to air quality in the city. And the other measures that we're putting in place, you can see on screen here, in terms of expanding the city's electric vehicle charging options, signing a contract with National Express to put up to 20 hydrogen buses into the city ahead of the clean air zone. Ahead of the Commonwealth Games, and then also supporting the Hackney carriage industry with electric Hackney carriages and buying a fleet of those and kind of leasing them out to the industry to try and encourage early adoption of this technology. So there's lots going on across the city. It's not just the clean air zone and then we're going to stop there. There's an awful lot being done across the authority to improve Birmingham's transport network and make the city cleaner, greener and more sustainable. So that completes the presentation. The next slide simply has our contact details on it. Hopefully the presentation has answered most of your questions, and we're going to do a Q&A session in a moment. But if you forget something or you have a very specific inquiry, then please head to our website, brumbreeds.co.uk. If you can't find what you're looking for, or you forget to ask the question this afternoon, then please email us, cleanair@birmingham.gov.uk. And just to sign off really by just really emphasising the message about the exemptions, please apply for your exemption as soon as possible. This time is running out now, as I say. I think it's 55 days until the zone goes live. Apply now, get that exemption, and then you've got that breathing space if you have got a non-compliant vehicle, and you can decide how you're going to change your behaviour if necessary, and adapt to the clean air zone, because it will be going live on the 1st of June. Okay, I think what we'll do is minimise the slides and go across to the Q&A session. So I've seen a couple that have already been published from Gavin, a copy of the slides. Yes, so what we will do, everyone who registered for this webinar, even if they haven't managed to attend, will be sent the slides, this recording, and Gemma puts together a huge swathe of kind of important links and information. So in answer to both of your first two questions, Gavin, absolutely yes, you will be supplied with all that information following the webinar. I'm just going to have a brief drink before I go on to the next question because I've been talking for too long. What support is available to workers that earn more than £30,000? Well, there isn't an exemption, nor is there a financial support package available. The £30,000 threshold is above the national kind of average wage, and was decided upon in collaboration with key stakeholders like the NHS and other kind of key workers. So there is not exempt. There is no other support available other than what I've described for people that earn more than £30,000 a year. Is air quality still an issue given the changes in working patterns as a result of COVID-19? Great question, Chris. Apologies, tripping over my tongue there. The short answer is absolutely, unfortunately, it is. We did see in the first lockdown, so a year ago, we did see significant but not enormous changes in the quality of air quality in the city, but traffic is already almost, we have a weekly report in our team meeting from another team which gives us the kind of traffic levels. Traffic is almost back up to about 100% of where it was pre-pandemic, even though we're still in a fairly heavy lockdown situation. So whilst people's working patterns may have changed, I think given some of the language used by government in relation to public transport, that some people may not be going back to public transport anytime soon, and unfortunately the traffic levels we're seeing are still resulting in poor air quality in the city. So we are still above legal limits and we still very much need the clean air zone. So yeah, in short answer, absolutely, air quality is still a big issue. Sorry I entered the talk late. So sorry, Lyndon, who entered the talk late, please can you again confirm the procedures to get you just need to go onto the front page of the Brumbreeds website. If you work in the jewellery quarter, you need to apply for the workers exemption, and then you need to supply to us 3 pieces of proof to meet the criteria. So you need to show us that you are the registered keeper of a non-compliant vehicle, show us that you earn less than £30,000 a year, and get a letter from your employer saying that Lyndon works at said location for more than 18 hours a week, and then submit that to us and we will process it for you. Bus gates, any way of implementing better signage way before the drivers to give the heads up? I would imagine that colleagues who implement bus gates and those sorts of things are following kind of standardised government transport guidance on where you put signs, etc. I'm not really in a position to comment on that really. I'm not a transport planner or kind of a technical person, but bus lanes, bus gates and bus lanes are signed in advance. You said the onus is on the driver to pay. How does that work if someone drives through the zone and doesn't pay? If you don't pay within the 13-day window, so 6 days prior or post your visit, then you will receive a penalty charge notice of £120 because you've failed to pay. If you then pay it within 14 days, it's reduced to £60. So if you don't pay, you'll get a fine. So your potential £8 will turn into 120 or £60. If you earn above the £30,000 threshold, no, you cannot apply for an exemption. No. That question at 12:32. Kate, question about the accuracy of the vehicle checker. I think it's important to say that no database in the world is 100% accurate. That vehicle checker has been operational for over a year now. There have been some issues where vehicles that Euro 6 vehicles, so Euro 6 diesel vehicles that were registered before September 2015 have been coming, which is when most Euro 6 came in, have been coming back as a negative result saying you will be charged. If that is the case for your vehicle or friends, family's vehicles, you think that your vehicle should be compliant and the vehicle checker tells you otherwise, myself or Jem will put a link in the chat now. You can contact the DVLA via the vehicle checker link. I'll find it now. It'll take me 2 seconds. And you can contact the DVLA, and what usually happens is that you just need to get your vehicle record updated. Let me just reply to you there, Kate. There you go. So yeah, the vehicle checker is very, very accurate. There are a small percentage of vehicles where in that situation, but there is a clear resolution to getting your vehicle checked. So our advice is to check your vehicle again before you travel into the zone. But if you have a result that you think is wrong, is to contact that date there. I would have been eligible for the scrappage scheme, but last year my dad gave me his car. So would that mean I would no longer be eligible? I don't really like to comment on kind of very specific circumstances. I think if you just email cleanair@birmingham.gov.uk, we'll look at that one. You do need to have been the registered keeper of the vehicle from 10th of September 2018 to be eligible for the scrappage scheme. So if you didn't have the vehicle in September 18, then you wouldn't be eligible. But yeah. So it depends if you've changed the name on the registered keeper, etc., and who applies for it. But yeah, so if you have very kind of case specific questions, I would suggest emailing through. But you do need to have owned the vehicle since been the registered keeper of the vehicle, I should say, since the 10th of September 18. The reason that date applies is because that's the date that the Clean Air Zone became official, went through Birmingham City Council cabinet, and was definitely going to happen. Okay, I think that's all of the published questions. So thank you very much for all of those questions. What we'll do is just give it, I'll put myself on mute for a minute or two to see if any further questions come through. And if they don't, we will just bring the call to a close. So just on behalf of myself and Gemma, just like to say thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to join us. Gemma will send round all of the information following the webinar. So please forward that on and share it. We want to engage as many people as possible, and we're doing it all digitally. So if you can share that forwards, that would be great. Okay, we've got another question. To Asma about parking permits, I would just suggest that you email us. We're not part of the parking team. If a new parking permit zone has been put outside your office, if you send us the details, the locations, we can hopefully find out. We can speak to the office of the parking team about that. But there should be information of that on the Birmingham City Council website. I know when they did the Digbeth scheme, businesses can apply for permits, but I don't know the finite details of those parking schemes. So if you want to email cleanair@birmingham.gov.uk, Asma, we will try and answer that query and put you on to parking colleagues. Okay. Just give it another minute, just in case any more questions pop up, and then otherwise we'll draw the call to a close. Thanks. Just to say, Asma, because it's a very busy inbox, just if you address that question for the attention of Peter Edwards, then colleagues will forward it on to me and I'll pick it up, because otherwise, right, yeah, just because I know the background, so if you just do that, that'd be great. Okay, no further questions coming through. So once again, thanks very much for joining, and yeah, please go on the website, check your vehicles, apply for exemptions, and spread the word. So on behalf of myself and Gemma, thanks very much. Oh, question. Oh no, that's just Gemma saying please share. Thanks, Gemma. Otherwise, we shall draw to a close. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.